Chapter 1. Prologue, The Wizard and the Whore Princess. That supreme, most magnificent kingdom, forged by fire and dragons. The blazing white sun scorched a city that stretched beyond the horizon. Countless ships raised sails of various colors, packed together like sardines in an endless harbor. The broad Lauren River flowed quietly. Above the river, a wide bridge spanning the river's mouth was broad enough for two carriages to pass side by side. Black stone-carved sphinxes, dragons, and manticores coldly observed the crowded people crossing the bridge. A nimble falcon darted across the sky like lightning. A feather fell, carefully picked up by a slave bearing a mage tattoo and placed in the simple basket on his back. A man with a tiger tattoo cracked a whip, directing a long line of slaves to sweep the broad street. The falcon flew over the bustling court district, thick with mingled scents of fish, flowers, excrement, and decay. It passed merchants and sailors from around the world, past tattooed slaves, flew before nobles sitting on golden chairs atop small elephants, wearing silk tokars, leaving a trail of indistinct curses. It flew past 200-foot-high black walls. Finally, the falcon landed on a peculiar black stone pillar topped with a coat of arms, a fire-breathing dragon encircled by laurel leaves, crafted of pure silver and glimmering in the sunlight. In the room opposite the pillar, an elderly man in a gray robe, holding a thick book, leaned against a fountain decorated with dragons and manticores, reading calmly. A beautiful silver-haired boy looked up somewhat joyfully, secretly glancing at the falcon. "Ray, listen carefully," the gray-robed elder said leisurely, reaching to touch the necklace of a dozen different metal rings on his chest. "I'm sorry, I just miss Flame Wing so much, Maester Vasari. Please don't tell my brother." 12-year-old Ray quickly averted his gaze, looking at Vasari with pleading eyes. This scholarly man came from a distant western place that those within the black walls called the Lands of Sunset. But Ray knew its true name was Westeros. His late parents often spoke of it. It was the homeland his mother both longed for and despised. "Your brother Drazel would not abandon the pursuit of knowledge for a mere falcon," the old scholar said gravely, turning the page. "Unless it were a young dragon. But we no longer have dragons." The boy lowered his head, while the aged voice continued reciting in High Valyrian. "Dawn shines upon a seemingly eternal kingdom, where the descendants of light and darkness, fire and ice, rule land and sea. Their reign lasted 10,000 years, until the destined moment. The Pearl Emperor ascended the throne, the Jade Emperor sewed royal garments, the Black Opal Emperor forged armor, the Topaz Emperor compiled books, the Amethyst Emperor sutured wounds. Order perished, the world descended into chaos, then came brother against sister, the long night, heroes drawing swords, the night lion mourning in grief." Just another worn-out mythical tale. Ray's thoughts had already flown to the falcon, Flame Wing. "But my brother loves it, perhaps because the purple crystal empress had purple eyes. He thinks it might be related to our ancestors." The boy blinked his beautiful violet eyes, pretending to listen carefully. "Your ancestors rose from the endless mountains of the 14 Fires. They were the children of the mountains, brave warriors, exceptional scholars, mysterious wizards, and outstanding craftsmen. Legends are just legends. Our ancestors were shepherds, descendants," Ray silently thought to himself. "That much we know clearly. They awakened the children of the 14 Fires," Vasari suddenly lowered his voice. "And thus the greatest nation was born. The Valyrians rode dragons and launched their great conquest. The beloved of the Harpies, the ancient Kaskari Empire was burned by dragon flame into salt marshes where crops would never grow again. And Roanar, with water magic capable of drowning dragons, their brave prince Garin also died with hatred, consumed by the rage of 300 dragons. Now it's getting interesting." Ray retracted his hand into the purple silk sleeve, a small silver dragon figurine mysteriously appearing in his palm. The boy gently caressed the statue, his thoughts finally returning to the thick book. During the peak of the Valyrian freehold, 40 dragon lord families tamed thousands of dragons. But now only one dragon-rearing family remains, or rather, not so much dragon lords as fortunate exiles. Ray continued stroking the statue, recalling previous noble lessons. The dragon lords schemed in Valyria's high towers while dragons roared wildly on volcanoes. Beneath the volcanoes, millions of slaves labored in mines for the dragon lords. Across the known world, the Andals fled like rats, the sages of Sarnar crawled on their knees, the ancient Kaskari were slaves to dragon lords, and the proud god emperor of Yeti considered it the greatest honor to marry a silver-haired noblewoman. The old scholar's voice gradually rose, as if singing a poem. The wise dreamwalker Daenerys Targaryen foresaw the brewing disaster, so the doomed family carried their dragons westward. What followed was an apocalyptic cataclysm. Dragon lords turned to ash, dragons fell from the high heavens. The powerful kingdom was obliterated in a single night. The old scholar cleared his throat and continued. Your ancestor, the last Valyrian emperor House Vaelerys, was at this time stationed with his dragon in Qohor. The proud dragon lord believed this was an excellent opportunity, and greed consumed his reason. He spent his entire fortune, recruiting a 30,000-strong army. This included wealth-seeking free mercenaries and farmers, Valyrian wandering warriors hoping to return home, and the Black Goat cavalry of Qohor. They obtained supplies in Volantis, where the dragon lord also left his descendants. The scholar looked at Ray, wise as he was, already seeing the boy's distraction. That is, your direct ancestor, the dragonless Lingol Vaelarys. I know him. Ray's violet eyes lit up, finally reaching his favorite family anecdote segment. To avoid assassination by those with ulterior motives, his mother, a noblewoman from a dragon lord family but without dragons, smashed the dragon egg left by Lord Ellen for his son. Of course, he also failed to hatch a dragon. The boy thought to himself. The great army disappeared in Valyria, and no one ever saw Lord Ellen and his red dragon again. Thus, the Vaelerys family, once ranked 7th among the 40 dragon lords and at its peak owning 150 adult dragons, fell into decline. The old scholar sighed deeply, turning to the next page of the book and continuing to narrate the history of the Vaelerys family after their migration to the Black Walls of Volantis. When Gaemond Vaelerys died, the Vaelerys family had already amassed enormous wealth. They owned vast fertile lands between the Lauren and Valerna rivers, 12 sugar plantations, 25 vineyards, 6 silk workshops, 2 private forests, 1 gold mine, 2 silver mines, and 7 rich iron mines. The scholar turned to the last page of the book. Claelorius Vaelarys, the most legendary patriarch in family history. Some say he was a madman, some say a genius, others say a terrifying wizard. In the first 20 years, he was a wastrel who squandered 2/3 of the family's fortune. In the next 20 years, he was a miracle worker who tripled the family's wealth on Gaemond's foundation. His glass was crystal clear, selling far and wide in Slavers Bay and the 9 free cities. The silver wine he brewed was rich and sweet, even the horse lords of the Dothraki were captivated. He tripled silk production, with luxurious silk-bearing silver dragon and laurel leaf patterns that even reached ET. He increased the yield of wheat, rice, sugar beets, and saffron year after year. His metallurgical designs doubled the output of gold and silver mines. His improved metal smelting techniques could forge steel second only to Valyrian steel and Qohor blood steel. The ships he designed were comparable to the purple sails of Bravos and the swan ships of the Summer Isles. If I hadn't witnessed the old master's glory with my own eyes, I would never have believed that a nobleman who never received an education from the Citadel could achieve these things, Maester Vasari thought to himself while speaking. He organized great maritime expeditions to Asshai and Westeros, earning countless gold through maritime trade. He liberated the family's slaves, elevating them to contract workers and servants. From among them, he selected 6,000 brave boys. From that day, Volantis, Silver Blood Army, and the Weepers were born. The nobles within the Black Walls said he conducted semi-public magical experiments. Shadow binders, warlocks, fire mages, blood sorcerers from Asshai, wizards from Karth, moon singers, and red priests from the great temple of Roller all frequented his palace. No one knew what your father wanted to do, until he rushed out of the palace like a madman, carrying treasures that could only be transported by 9 elephants, and charged into a notorious brothel in Volantis. He married our mother. Ray stared into the old scholar's eyes, thinking to himself. That mother who passed away when I was born. In my homeland, people called her the whore princess. Her name was Saera Targeryan. Vasari paused, a hint of regret in his eyes. She was the 9th daughter of the former King Jaehaerys Targaryen I. In the wild first half of her life, she had more men around her than her own silver hairs. I know, Ray had never respected his mother. Even as a young boy, he often felt sad about her past. There are several of her bloodlines around his brother alone. And that silver-haired bastard from the former regent's family, the boy thought to himself. 23 years ago, the princess ended her dissolute life in Lee, came to settle in Volantis, and established her own brothel a year later, the infamous House of Dragon Bastards. No one understood why your father would marry a prostitute, despite her blood being from the only dragon lord family with dragons. Even less did anyone understand what reason the princess had for accepting your father's proposal, and then self-imprisoning for 2 years to purify her bloodline. Vasari closed the book. I can't understand it either, but history happened this way. In the 3rd year of their marriage, your elder brother Drazel Vaelarys and Valar Vaelerys were born. The twin birth almost killed the aging princess. She thereafter lingered on her sickbed, and the old master seemingly lost his passion for his wife, turning his energy to your wise elder brother. Master Drazel was no less intelligent than the old master. At 7, he was familiar with all family businesses and affairs, and at 9, he independently completed trade with Bravos and Lee. In his final days, the old master passed all his wisdom to your elder brother, until he passed away in his own laboratory. Where are you going? The old scholar's voice cut off as the silver-haired boy suddenly sprang up like a monkey, running unceremoniously towards the main hall. The silver dragon statue in his sleeve suddenly became scorching hot, as if burning. Ray immediately realized what was happening. Brother is back. I'm going to see him, Maester Vasari. We'll make up today's lesson tomorrow. Ray's clear voice echoed through the corridor intertwined with stone pillars and grapevines. The old scholar smiled bitterly and shook his head. Softly he said, but your lesson for today has already ended. He straightened his gray robe and necklace. Drazel Vaelarys was his master, so naturally he needed to go and greet him. The silver dragon statue in his sleeve grew hotter and hotter, but Ray felt no pain, only comfort. The boy ran through the corridor, just passing the dragon crystal-carved dragon statue. A round object rolled and tumbled to his feet. Ray's heart felt like it was suddenly gripped by a large hand. His hand involuntarily rose to cover his mouth, forcibly suppressing the scream that had reached his throat. It was a human head. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 2. Drazel Vaelarys. Chapter 2. Drazel Vaelarys. Pale gold hair and beard were tangled together, stained with dust and blood, as lifeless blue-violet eyes stared at the boy. The gaping mouth seemed as if it wanted to say something, but alas, it could no longer speak. It was the son of the former consul of Volantis and his mother. The boy recognized the source of the severed head. No, he screamed in his heart. Please don't let it be Drazel who did this. That would be kinslaying, the gravest of sins. What are you looking at, Ray? His brother's voice came from behind him. Ray turned abruptly, his frightened violet eyes meeting the deep purple gaze of his brother. The silver-haired boy smiled at his younger brother. Tall and lean, about 15 or 16 years old, his slightly wavy short silver hair framed a refined, serene face. His deep purple eyes narrowed slightly, exuding warmth and restraint. Even among the famously beautiful Valyrian nobility, the boy's appearance stood out as one of the finest. He wore a cool and comfortable purple silk toga, with his arm exposed to reveal a beautifully crafted silver dragon armlet, a detail underscoring his extraordinary status. Brother. Ray pointed at the severed head, fear filling his wide eyes as he stared at Drazel Vaelarys. Drazel smiled, ruffling his younger brother's silver hair. He turned toward the slightly chaotic main hall, his gaze shifting from the warmth of Volantis's spring to a sudden, cold sharpness. Ymor, you've frightened my brother. My apologies, young master. A brawny man with curly facial hair raised a long-handled battle axe still dripping with blood, bowing slightly toward Ray. The wyvern tattoo on his cheek gleamed under the sunlight. Master, this man infiltrated the estate, attempting to steal your belongings. As dictated by the Black Wall Codex of Volantis, I executed the thief. With that, Ymor nudged the corpse, its neck still bleeding, with his foot, causing it to topple to the ground. He gestured for the unsullied guards stationed at the estate to drag it away. Kinslaying, Drazel, you've committed kinslaying. The accusation rang out in High Valyrian, its sharp pronunciation flawed by grammatical errors. A corpulent silver-haired man pointed a trembling finger at Drazel, his fear evident in his soaked trousers. He shouted loudly, flanked by unsullied soldiers armed with spears. Even more unsullied and tattooed silver-armored guards encircled them. This man as well, Ymor declared, lifting his battle axe. According to the law, when a Black Wall noble leads armed men into another's estate, it is considered a declaration of war. Drazel gently patted Ray's head, signaling him to step back, before focusing his gaze on the corpulent man. "And who might you be?" "You." The man nearly fainted from anger. "Oh, I remember now." Drazel clapped his hands. "You're Carvado, the youngest son of Carvado, the former consul of House Bontaro." He took a few steps forward, gesturing for Ymor to lower his axe. "I've just returned from the workshops in the town of Volantis and am not fully aware of what has transpired. So, Lord Carvado, would you kindly explain why you've brought armed men into my estate?" At this point, Carvado was already regretting being goaded by his unreliable bastard brother into getting involved in this mess. "Lord Drazel," Carvado began, emboldened by the fact that Drazel hadn't immediately ordered him expelled. He shrank behind a burly Unsullied, leaving only his head visible. "Please forgive my intrusion. I am here on behalf of House Bontaro to offer condolences for the recent passing of Lord Claelorius of House Vaelerys, who has joined the gods. As for the soldiers..." Carvado glanced around at the main hall, his unsullied guards, and the shivering male and female slaves huddled nearby. His voice grew louder. "They are my slaves. The laws of Volantis permit nobles to bring slaves when visiting others. These unsullied ensure my safety. As for the male slaves, they carry me, and the female slaves." Ymor raised his battle axe again before Carvado could finish speaking. The towering warrior stared at him silently, forcing Carvado to swallow his words. "The House of Vaelerys has no slaves. Even the Unsullied, under the sigil of the Silver Dragon, serve as contract-bound retainers," Drazel said, stepping forward with his arms spread wide. "The family welcomes friends who respect our traditions," he declared, glancing at the bloodstains on the ground. "But we will not tolerate schemers and thieves. Lord Carvado, why have you truly come here?" he demanded in loud, commanding high Valyrian. I came to mourn the passing of Lord Claelorius Vaelarys," Carvado stammered, his voice trembling. "And him?" Drazel tilted his head toward the bloodstain. The corpse had already been swiftly removed by the Unsullied. "If I'm not mistaken, that man was yours. Lord Drazel, please don't misunderstand. While that man was distantly related to me, he was not part of my retinue. I hardly knew him." Carvado quickly disavowed the connection. One had to admire the quick thinking of this scion of House Bontaro. Drazel sighed, shaking his head. "Then why did you accuse me of kinslaying?" Under Drazel's piercing violet gaze, Carvado felt a wave of discomfort wash over him. This time, he even hid his head entirely behind the Unsullied. "Lord Drazel, forgive me," he switched to High Valyrian tinged with the unique accent of Volantis. "That was easier on the ears. My High Valyrian is not very proficient. Perhaps I misspoke, and you misunderstood. I swear by R'hllor, the Lord of Light, and by the gods of ancient Valyria. I swear upon the honor of House Bontaro." Ray, who had been quietly observing from behind Drazel, smirked to himself. "Honor," he thought. According to Maester Vasari, old Carvado only became consul through bribery, paying off senators and council members and even throwing coins to voters in the streets outside the Black Wall. Just then, Ray noticed a group of young men huddled together in the corner of the main hall, whispering among themselves. He glanced at his brother before inching closer to the group. "I see," Drazel finally said, scanning the faces of Carvado's entourage, all of whom avoided his gaze in fear. He waved for his own guards to stand down. "Lord Carvado, please extend my thanks to House Bontaro for their condolences. House Bontaro is deeply grieved by the passing of Lord Claelorius Vaelarys," Carvado said, visibly relieved that Drazel had let him off the hook. He even managed to squeeze out a few tears. "As a token of sorrow, I personally gift the land between Little Royne and Ben Ordul Manor, along with 2,000 tiger pelts, for the funeral rites. The family's gifts will follow shortly." "Thank you, Lord Carvado," Drazel said, bowing slightly and raising his hand to dismiss him. Two Unsullied quickly supported Carvado, who could no longer stand, and hurriedly escorted him and his entourage, slaves and soldiers alike, out of the estate. Drazel pressed a hand to his temple. That fool Carvado couldn't possibly have been unaware of the dead man's identity. He was Carvado's bastard brother, and Drazel's half-brother. All of this was the result of Princess Saera's ill-fated entanglements. Although Drazel had already brought most of his mother's illegitimate children under control, there were still a few who remained like thorns in his side. Thankfully, most of them had already returned to the gods. There was only one exception. Alexiu Bontaro, the unlucky man who had been beheaded by Ymor. This bastard, who was nearing middle age, had even participated in the Great Council of 101 in Westeros. If it hadn't been for Princess Saera's tarnished reputation, well, even if her reputation were spotless, with her status, this bastard would never have had a chance to sit on the Iron Throne. Even though he couldn't speak anymore, Drazel knew exactly what Alexiou had come for, making such a spectacle from his own estate. "Don't think just because I'm young, I'm an easy target," Drazel muttered, turning to walk toward the fountain in the center of the main hall. With his palm facing down and without a single visible motion, a droplet of blood, glinting with silver, fell into the water. It vanished immediately. "It seems Mother's troublesome ties are finally severed," Drazel said, retracting his hand as he walked toward his brother and the young attendants, laughing and chatting together. Ymor, with his battle axe resting on his shoulder, stayed close by Drazel's side. "Ymor, where did Valar go?" Drazel asked about his twin brother. "Lord Valar went to the Silverblood military estate at Orange Coast. You've set him a military training program, overseen by the unsullied centurion, Silver Scorpion." "Good." After asking about his brother, Drazel arrived near the group of young attendants, still laughing and talking. Lyn Valtaken, with his black hair streaked with silver, was holding Ray, smiling and speaking with him. His bronze arms were muscular, and despite his youth, any experienced observer could see he was a skilled warrior. Amos Fezer, with his neat silver hair, was leaning against a nearby pillar with his arms crossed, smiling warmly. A Dothraki youth named Argo, bare-chested with braided hair, stood silently leaning against the wall. His curved arak blade shimmered at his waist, but his eyes held a knowing smile. Sebastian Pyribane, with striking, bright eyes, saw Drazel approach and gave a slight bow, stepping aside to make way. This revealed the young man with silver hair who had been leaning against the wall, wearing a mischievous grin. "Tigero, what did you prepare for Carvaxo?" Drazel clearly knew what his companions had been up to. After scanning the group, his eyes fell on the one still grinning mischievously, Tigero Targeryan. "My lord, he drank the wine I handed him," Tigero replied, his smile fading as he spoke more formally. "Rest assured, I didn't prepare anything too strong. Just a mix of woodland scorpion venom and lee salt crystals." Drazel raised a hand to stop him from continuing. "Just tell me how long he has left. If he abstains from both wine and other activities," Tigero made a gesture with his fingers, "he should last a month or so. If he can't control himself, 3 days at most. The more he drinks, the faster he dies." "Well done. As you wish." Drazel gave Tigero a light pat on the shoulder and, with Ymor following closely, made his way through the corridor and into the main hall of the estate. Surrounded by marble pillars, a large map table carved with the roots of the Valyrians family stood at the center. The young attendants followed closely behind with Ray, standing in formation by Drazel's side. Servants entered, carrying copper urns filled with ice, and the temperature inside the room became much more comfortable. These young people were Drazel's key allies in managing the family's affairs. Lyn Valtaken, also a bastard of Princess Saera, came from a very humble background. Before Drazel took him in, he didn't even know who his parents were and had lived in the port of Lee, collecting debts to survive. Amos Fezer and Sebastian Pyribane were both from a slave ship that had been captured by the Valyrians fleet. Lee's pirate fleet had destroyed Sebastian's hometown and captured him while he was still a child. Amos, also of Valyrian blood, had been slated for sale to one of Lee's brothels. Fortunately, the slave ship never reached Lee's shores. Argo came from a small khalasar that had sought shelter under the Valyrians family. His khal died in a battle in the Great Grass Seas, and another khal destroyed their khalasar. That second khalasar, too, had been defeated by the Tiger Cloak army guarding the borders of Volantis. Tigero Targeryan, like the others, came from Lee. However, unlike his fellow Lee natives, his father, Fisher Targeryan, had once been immensely wealthy. Everything ended in the infighting of Lee. Fisher died from poisoned wine, and Tigero was sold into slavery by rival families, only to be rescued and adopted by Drazel's father. Maester Vasari and the family's chief vassal, Vanson Cown, were already waiting by the map table. "My lord, we've followed your instructions and sold the northern estates," Vanson Cown said with a slight bow as Drazel approached the table. "All were priced in gold and silver." "Which family bought them?" Drazel asked, his eyes shifting to the chief vassal, who sported a long black beard. Mainly Lord Hamar of House Lanagar and Lord Dolan of House Megaya, Vanson replied as he walked around Drazel, speaking quietly. Lord Dolan is willing to pay 20% more in hopes of inviting you to a banquet at the Megaya Palace. Understood. Drazel seemed to have expected this development. Volantis, as the most closely allied city-state to the freehold of Valyria in Essos, had always maintained a republican system. After the cataclysm that destroyed Valyria, Volantis attempted to rebuild the Valyrian Empire by launching a war. The conflict, later known as the Bloody Era, ended with Volantis's defeat. The Tiger Party, which had spearheaded the war, was forced into retreat, and to this day, 2 of the 3 consuls of the Volantis Senate belong to the victorious Elephant Party that emerged from the chaos. The Vaelerys family were supporters of the Elephant Party, and Vagad, head of House Lanagar, was one of the current Elephant Party consuls. As for House Megaya, which offered the higher price, their head, Baricio, was the sole representative of the Tiger Party in this round of consuls. The reason was clear. Did you agree to Lord Dolan's offer? Drazel lightly tapped the table. No, Vanson Cowan shook his head. But Lord Dolan is also interested in purchasing the family's mines. The mines can wait. Drazel then turned his gaze to Maester Vasari. Maester Vasari, how are the large ships at the shipyard coming along? Maester Vasari pulled a parchment from his sleeve. The Weeping Youth and Silent Lord have completed their trials. The Claelorius and Sea Dragon have just been launched. I can assure you, these ships are capable of sailing in any waters. Even the smoking sea of Valyria. Drazel spoke softly. Maester Vasari hesitated, his words faltering. Drazel said nothing further, nodding as he turned his attention back to Vanson. Lord Cowan, continue with the sale of the lands, workshops, and estates as planned. The mines can be sold last. His deep purple eyes swept over the young attendants standing nearby. Argo, take Sebastian and Amos to the Silverblood military manor and make sure Valar and the others are ready. Yes, blood of my blood. Argo lowered his head. The young Dothraki stubbornly saw himself as Drazel's sworn bloodbound warrior, a tradition of the Dothraki where the Khaal's closest friends and warriors were treated as brothers. Lyn, take Tigero and handle the affairs in Volantis City. As you wish. Before Lyn could finish his sentence, he grabbed Tigero and hurried out. Maester Vasari. Drazel finished giving out orders and turned to the elderly scholar. We can depart now. As you wish. Beneath the Vaelerys estate lay a massive artificial cavern. It had once been a place where the previous heads of the family stored treasures and fine wines. Now, it had become a vast laboratory. Drazel walked among the bizarrely shaped statues and intricate symbols. There were twisted sphinxes, wingless dragons resembling serpents, faceless beings, humanoids with different faces on every part of their bodies, and figures with blazing fires, along with humanoid forms inlaid with different gemstones. Silver and blood red flowed over the complex symbols, finally converging at the center of the lab. At the center, a book with a silver red cover lay quietly, seemingly waiting for someone to open it. Drazel pressed his lips together and, under the watchful gaze of Maester Vasari and Yamor, opened the book. To my eldest son, Drazel Vaelarys, the opening words read. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 3. Father's Notes, The Blood of Valyria and Magic. I think you've taken care of everything well after my death, my child. I'm sorry that the last time I saw you was in this way. I was not a good father because of my impulsiveness and foolishness, which made you and your brother carry the label of being the sons of the whore princess. Of course, I know you don't care about that. Drazel sneered, continuing to read. The writing was still the beautiful, elegant cursive of High Valyrian, used by the noble class. Everyone has secrets, and your old man has his too. As for what this secret is, it's no longer important. I've already taken it to the grave with me, and you need not know. Quote. Drazel fought the urge to throw the book away and turn to the next page. I lived half of my life recklessly, and half of it with clarity. Only in the end did I realize that you are the damn Goldfinger the gods sent to me. A born blood mage. If there wasn't a way to confirm it, I would almost have thought you were like me. Goldfinger. Drazel scratched his head, puzzled. I thought I could master the magic from the legends, or at least that the blood of Vaelerys could allow me to hatch a dragon. Unfortunately, I was wrong. From the words, Drazel could sense his usually carefree father's regret and dissatisfaction. I attracted countless magicians. Some of them indeed had some skill, but unfortunately, more were frauds. If you ever have a chance to go to Qohor, remember to spit on the unchanging hall for your old man. Gods, those male mages had some ability, but they wanted to extract the blood of both of us. HMPH, if I had a dragon, I'd have blasted them first. You must have become obsessed with dragons, old man. Drazel thought to himself. However, he understood his father's plans, so he had always followed them. After all, which Valyrian boy could resist the allure of dragons? How many nights had he dreamed of soaring through the skies, bathed in moonlight? But your old man was still quite lucky. At least I managed to create something. My child, I hope these results can help you complete our grand plan. First, you must have already read the tomes brought by Maester Vasari and learned about the ancient legends of various regions, as well as the history of the freehold of Valyria. By now, you must be wondering, why did the Valyrians rise? Why did a people who had been silent for thousands of years have such strange appearances? Why are our noble bloodlines able to control dragons, and where did these dragons come from? Of course, I've wondered about that. Drazel replied instinctively. I wondered too. I read all the family's texts, as well as those brought by the magicians. Without a doubt, the Valyrians could not possibly be a naturally occurring race. Our blood carries elements of magic. My child, do you still remember the words of our house? We bleed silver, Drazel silently repeated in his mind. He had already suspected this, and now his father's notes might confirm his guess. I bleed silver, this is our family's language. In the West, in Westeros, your mother's family's language is fire and blood, did you notice that? We, the Dragonlord families, value our bloodline and emphasize it. During the time of the Freehold, the 40 Dragonlord families either intermarried or committed incest within their own clans, not only to prevent our bloodline from leaking out but, more importantly, to preserve the magical elements in our blood. Son, you are a born blood mage. A pure bloodline is no challenge for you, and I'm sure you understand that the source of a blood mage's magic is blood. Not only blood mages, but in the fire magic system of the Red God R'hllor, as well as the shadow magic system of Ashai, blood sacrifices are an important component. And our Valyrian steel, as recorded in the family texts, also requires blood in its forging process. Blood is the currency of the magical world. This is the axiom of equivalent exchange, and our Dragonlord family's blood is even more precious. Your blood magic will far surpass any blood mage I've ever seen, and that's the source of my confidence. Drazel furrowed his brows. He certainly knew how powerful his blood was. Weapons tainted with his blood would become sharper, poisons mixed with his blood could become 10 times more potent. He could track people with his blood, hear the thoughts of those who drank his blood, and control animals through his blood. But he didn't understand the source of his father's confidence. Their grand plan was not complicated. Claelorius had designed a set of intricate blood magic runes, set to resist the curses of the Smoking Sea. They wanted to find the army of Vaelerys, who had gone missing, along with the dragon eggs he had with him. The blood of the Valyrian Dragonlords, combined with blood magic, do you understand now? Son, what I want to replicate is the process by which the ancient Valyrians tamed and hatched dragons. The family has always had a fleet lingering at the edges of the Smoking Sea. What we can confirm is that the central part of the Smoking Sea is extremely dangerous. This area includes Valyria and most of the former Freehold's territory. So, no matter what, you must never enter these regions. But the edges, I believe, with magical protection, you can venture into with a small group. The western edge of the broken peninsula of Valyria includes the swamps through which the Valyrian road passed, the fortress city of once owned by the Miracidhan family, but then owned by our own family, the tower of the Galasos family's fire sorcerers, and the estates of several smaller families. This information comes from the family's archives. If you're brave enough, you can explore these areas freely. But be cautious. We attempted to recreate Vaelerys' route. Before his complete disappearance, his army was last seen at the marshes on the edge of the peninsula. If his army didn't enter the heart of Valyria, their location would likely be between the city of Vasuril and the Galasos Tower. The Vaelerys family served the Valyrian deity, Womisel, during the Freehold era. He was the god of forging. Therefore, the family possessed the secrets of forging Valyrian steel before the destruction. If you manage to reach Visceral, you'll be in luck. At the very least, you won't run out of Valyrian steel. During the time of the Freehold, the Dragonlords used volcanoes and magic to hatch dragons. Today, after the fall of the dragons, the Targaryens in the Land of the Sun rely on the pure bloodline of newborns to hatch dragons. Regardless of where the dragons come from, as of now, only our bloodline can control them. That is enough. My son, your veins carry the blood of 2 great Dragonlord families. I believe the purity of your bloodline is at least equal to that of the Dragonlords from back then. I'm sorry, my child, for burdening you with such a dangerous mission, but I trust you will succeed. I'm sorry I wasn't a good father, letting my child carry my ambitions and dreams. All for the family. Drazel clenched the pages of the book. For the family. For Valar and Rey. My child, may your blood always flow with honor, may the Vaelerys bloodline never wither, and may the glory of dragons return to the family. Drazel lifted his head and closed his eyes. It seemed like something crystalline and transparent quietly fell. Shadows flickered, and a bearded man in a red robe quietly stepped out from the darkness. Lord Drazel, are you prepared? Drazel opened his eyes and placed the notes back in their place. Proceed, servant of the Red God. As you wish, the red-robed monk bowed. Son of the god. The Bentaro estate. The towering orange trees shielded the harsh sunlight of Volantis, and expensive wine was spilled all over the floor. Mogul Bontaro, the head of the Bentaro family, stared at the unconscious Carvado, who was in the arms of 2 frightened, beautiful slaves. Veins bulged on his forehead. Lord, we really didn't know. Master just kept asking for more wine, the male slave begged, clinging to his master's feet, large tears falling to the floor. Then he saw his own body. HMPH. Mogul disdainfully extended his foot toward one of the female slaves, signaling her to clean the stains off his shoes. The Unsullied beside him silently withdrew his battle axe. We did not find any known poisons on the young master, said the slave doctor, his face tattooed with snakes, as he crawled before Mogul. It seems he just drunk too much. I don't have such a foolish as a son. Mogul forced his rage down. Prepare the golden palanquin. We are going to Megaia Palace. Yes. 0 comments 0 vote. Pissed. Download the app for additional rewards. More events, more perks. Winning you more free perks. Download now. RightTranslation. Download app now. Chapter 4. The Tiger and Elephant Party. On the black foundations, pure white marble columns surrounded the area. Groups of male and female slaves moved back and forth in the long corridors, gathering at the flowing courtyard in the center of the palace. Water, mixed with ice cubes, slowly flowed through specially crafted channels, bringing a rare coolness to the scorching heat of Volantis. Neatly trimmed shrubs divided the entire courtyard like a maze. Flowers bloomed, and the scent of melons and fruits could be clearly smelled even outside the massive palace. At the center of the courtyard, several gem-embedded reclining chairs were placed. Men in toga-like robes lay in groups of 2 or 3 on the chairs. Female slaves, dressed lightly, raised their faces adorned with flowers and hearts, offering fresh fruits and light green Volantis wine to their master's lips. Doran, your plan has failed. A man with an exaggerated beard took a sip of the green wine handed to him by the slave. The pigs and bastards of the Bontaro family are dead. The coward ran to your father and cried. If it weren't for your father being willing to lose face, this would have likely turned out badly. Doran Megaia picked up a roasted sacred golden beetle from the back of a kneeling male slave, dipped it in some chili, and threw it into his mouth, chewing loudly. That's their stupidity. I told them to test the Valyrians boy, but I never told them to steal property. Hey, is the old wizard's stuff so easy to steal? The tiger has been silent for too long. The man who spoke was tall and thin, with a mustache as thin and sharp as a sword. When the old wizard was alive, we were suppressed by those spineless cowards from the elephant parties. Now that the old wizard is dead, what is the boy doing? He sat up, took a large gulp of the green wine, and kicked the wine-serving slave over. Go fetch the Valyrians silver wine, you bitch. The silver wine packs more punch. The slave who was kicked did not dare to raise her head, crawling out on all fours. The boy is selling his father's land. The man's expression twisted into a snarl. Doran, what do you think he's trying to do? That land is the old wizard's legacy. I don't know. Doran Megaia casually picked through the food, grabbed a fried worm that was golden and crispy, and cut it open to reveal meat paste mixed with chili sauce inside. Anyway, I'll buy as much as he sells. Too bad the elephant party's little brats are causing trouble. Otherwise, all that land would be ours. Is it only the land? A voice came from an old man who had been silently drinking wine. Lord Barisio, what do you mean? The bearded man quickly sat up and turned his face toward the head of the Megaya family, the Tiger Party's governing official. Doran, doesn't your contract exclude the farmers on the land and the workers in the workshops? Barisio's simple question stirred a great turmoil in Doran's heart. Generally speaking, the inclusion of slaves with land estates is an accepted rule, Doran replied. But the old wizard had no rules. Barisio said lightly. The farmers on his land, the workers in his workshops, the miners in his mines, and the soldiers in his army were all different from Volantis traditions. Those, the old official paused. They weren't slaves, but hired workers, so their contracts are still in the boys' hands. This, Doran thought for a moment. Lord Barisio, but the land is already ours. The yield from these lands far exceeds ours. It's already more than worth the cost. Without the old wizard's skilled farmers, workers, or his techniques, how can you guarantee the yield for the coming years? Barisio could hardly contain his frustration. Are you jumping into a hole just because it's there? He scowled. Did you use high prices to compete with the elephant party's brats? Yes. Doran's face flushed with embarrassment. But the land is still important. More than half of the Valyrians family estates are in elephant party territory. We can use this to infiltrate their voting districts. We're not at war with the elephant party's brats right now, Barisio put a hand to his forehead. Or do you think we can win their votes? A silence followed. Forget it. Barisio, seeing no one respond, continued on his own. Doran, you can continue to acquire the land of the Valyrians family. Since the boy is selling it, it's not a bad thing to buy it back. At the very least, it can earn a favor from the family. I understand, Lord Barisio. Doran, encouraged by the fact that his actions hadn't been completely rejected, perked up. My intention was also to gain favor with the Valyrians family. But, the bearded man suddenly thought of something. The coward of the Bontaro family seems to want to do something. Should we? Barisio narrowed his eyes. These matters have nothing to do with us. He paused for a moment. Ignore them. Are you saying that after the Valyrians boy buried the old wizard, he will start to sell the family estates? Madame Clifna Vesama, the female official of the elephant party, had gathered the party's members and was discussing the Valyrians family's sale of their estates. Yes, madam, Hamal of the Exlanaga family pointed at the map in the council hall. He was the brother of the god, the Exlanaga family's official, and a candidate for the next official. Regardless of what the Valyrians boy intends to do, his family's land is fertile. Even without the attached farmers and workers on the estate, we can still make use of it for several years. Even without the old wizard's methods, the yield of the land would still be considerable after a few years. At worst, purchasing the land would be a favor to our members. Councillor Hamal, but I heard that you've lost to the Tiger Party's men in many land bids. A tall man with blue facial hair raised a question. If the Exlanaga family is short on money, we can pay on their behalf. Although the Valyrians family hasn't held a seat for a long time, they've always been our supporters. We can't afford to lose such a powerful ally. Yes, at least their silver-blooded army is truly formidable. The general of the Tigercloaks couldn't sit still. With their family, we won't have to worry about the Tigercloaks under the Tiger Party control. Enough. Madame Clifna thought for a moment. Do you know what the Valyrians boy's purpose is in selling the family's estates? Everyone fell silent. Only Hamal seemed to have an idea. I can roughly guess. The sale of the Valyrians family's land didn't start with Drazel's inheritance. Even when the old wizard was still alive, they had already begun selling off slowly. This suggests it wasn't some impulsive decision by Dragonzel Vaelarys. And when they were selling, the Valyrians family was already well prepared, even with plans we might not know about. What about the freemen? Madame Clifna raised the key issue. Volantis, democratic politics was straightforward. Every freeman who owned land could participate in the elections for officials and had their own votes. These freemen were practically dependent on the large families of landowners. They were not entirely free. Long-established ruling families like Megaya, Xlanaga, and Vesama had voting blocks that could total tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of votes. And if Dragonzell Vaelerys wanted to run for the Senate, the freeman dependent on his family would have no fewer than 10,000 votes. Aside from the contract-bound freemen and craftsmen, the rest will likely change ownership with the land. Hamal said, "Madam, please rest assured, the Vaelerys family's vassals who have contracted with me have guaranteed that there will be no significant loss of votes." "Well done." Madam Clifna nodded. "Keep an eye on the Vaelerys family. If the silver-blooded army is also being handed over, we must secure it at any cost, along with the Vaelerys family's silk workshops." The general of the Tiger Cloaks spoke loudly. "As for the Tiger Party, just keep watching them." Madam Clifna lightly tapped the clearly divided regions of the two parties on the map. "Don't worry about funding. The Vesama family will invest gold and silver worth 3 million gold suns in total to acquire the land and property being sold by the Vaelerys family. You are free to outbid the Tiger Party. The Horden family will contribute 700,000 gold suns." The tall man with the blue beard raised his hand. "Lord Hamal, we cannot let our votes slip away to the Tiger Party." The Elephant Party was still wary of the Tiger Party, which had once possessed a powerful military force, even though they had been in decline for a long time. "The Margolwyn family will invest 1,200,000 gold suns." The general of the Tiger Cloaks also raised his hand. "Lord Hamal, we cannot let the silver-blooded army fall into the hands of the Tiger Party." The Elephant Party members quickly reached a consensus. Regardless of what Drazel Vaelerys intended to do, at least the Vaelerys family's assets could not fall into the hands of the Tiger Party, especially their formidable military strength. In the underground laboratory of the Vaelerys residence, Drazel stripped off all his clothes and took a Valyrian steel dagger decorated with pure silver from the hands of a red-robed priest. The priest's face was covered with fire tattoos, his eyes and face adorned with red patterns, yet his eyes were filled with fervor. Another red-robed priest emerged from the shadows. This priest was older, with a face full of wrinkles, also tattooed with burning flames and roaring dragons. His long white beard hung down to his chest, decorated with fire-shaped ornaments. His violet-blue eyes were similarly filled with fervor and devotion. Drazel recognized him. Ben Throro, the high priest of the Red God's temple in Volantis, was also a frequent visitor and magician associated with Claelorius. "Begin." Ben Throro nodded at the young red-robed priest. Without hesitation, the priest drove the dagger into his chest. Drazel extended his hand, and the priest's blood seemed to follow a guiding force, flowing across the floor of the laboratory along the ritualistic symbols in all directions. Then, flames. They ignited. 2 comments 0 vote. Chapter 5. Walking Through Fire. It started as a faint little flame. Drazel watched as the young red-robed priest was enveloped by the pale fire, his body slowly charring, yet he seemed unaffected by the pain. Instead, his eyes glowed with fervor, fixed on Drazel, as if urging him to hurry. These two red-robed priests were not orthodox followers of the Red God. They were, in fact, notorious heretics within the Great Temple. The Red God, R'hllor, or the Lord of Light, the heart of the sacred flame, the god of shadows and fire, of heat and life. His faith was widespread across the trading city-states of Essos. His followers believed in the eternal struggle between the great Red God and the evil cold Shadow God, which determined the fate of the world. They considered the Lord of Light as the true God, denouncing all other gods as false or evil. However, Ben Throro and his young disciple, Malak, had some disagreements with this view. Before they had taken vows, both priests came from ancient Valyrian families. Though they still worshipped the Lord of Light and acknowledged his greatness, they believed more in the power of dragons and the grandeur of the ancient Valyrian gods and dragonlords. During the reign of the Valyrian freehold over the lands west of the Bone Mountains, the worship of R'hllor had been relegated to slaves and commoners. The Valyrian dragonlords saw themselves as gods and even regarded the Valyrian gods as mere puppets of mud. It was no wonder that the faith of the common people had been ignored. The more radical young Malak even believed that R'hllor was merely a lie created by the dragonlords to placate the masses. He did not even realize that his own name was linked to R'hllor's. Though his faith was pure, more so than many of the temple priests who worship the one true God, his convictions were firm and sincere. It seemed that their Valyrian bloodline had granted them superior fire magic compared to other priests of their age. Though the temple priests disapproved of their heretical views, they tolerated them because their magical power was invaluable in the temple's work. That tolerance continued until they were recruited by Claelorius and began studying the secrets of magic and dragons together. Master Ben Throro, you promised me, Drazel raised the dagger. Malik won't die, will he? Ben Throro shook his head. My lord, before coming here, I received a vision from the Lord of Light in the flames. He is pleased to see your attempt today. His demand is only a little blood, not a life. The Red Priest lowered his head. The blood of a Dragonlord's descendant, the flesh of a devout believer, and pure fire can pierce through the mists of history, revealing the true path to the lost boy. Malik nodded in encouragement once more. Without hesitation, he took the dagger and gouged out a large piece of his own flesh from his chest, throwing it into the fire. The flames flared up, growing from their previous pale form into a solid, vibrant fire, swirling around Drazel without consuming him, as though craving something. Father, I hope this will help me solidify my resolve, Drazel whispered. He pierced his palm. A drop of silver-colored blood slid down the Valyrian steel dagger, staining it with a strange black gleam. That drop of blood slowly fell. The moment it hit the fire, the flames seemed to exhale in pleasure, and instantly, they surged up. The sea of fire spread, engulfing the entire laboratory in what felt like an instant. Ben Throro watched the raging flames with rapture, stepping onto the fire as though it was nothing, allowing the flames to scorch his body. The sensation of drowning rose like a tide, then receded. Drazel warily looked around at the pitch-black surroundings. Without warning, a blinding light exploded from the darkness, and Drazel instinctively closed his eyes. Then came the sound of a magnificent symphony. It was as if countless hands reached out from all directions, strumming the same chords that filled the air. First, a deep and powerful melody. Drazel felt his way through the vast light that had reclaimed his vision, until the music began. Grasslands grew, forests blossomed. A small green shadow wandered through the endless forest, while towering mountains rose from the earth. Then, the music softened. The omnipresent melody became gentle and soothing, like a river flowing quietly. A giant turtle sang in the river, the forest split, and the great river surged. A figure with goat horns, human-like in shape, built cities by the river, planting seeds. Drazel furrowed his brow. Is this history? The young man slowly approached the goat-headed figure. The shadow, whose face could not be seen, raised a hammer and struck down heavily. Sparks flew. The music grew intense. The ubiquitous music, now both uplifting and piercing, swelled around him. Half the world was burning, while the other half seemed frozen, trapped in boundless, endless silence. Drazel couldn't help but quicken his pace, feeling an endless terror chasing after him. Figures crowned with crowns swept past him, some with pearl-like eyes, some with eyes the color of emeralds, others with eyes of yellow jade. Only the last two figures stood out, one with eyes like amethyst, looking down at the running youth, and the other with eyes like bloodstone, gazing upward toward the endless sky. The stars struggled to tear apart the infinite light, and flesh grew wildly, these stars hanging in the sky like eyes, staring intently at the vast earth below. A man raised a flaming sword, and a faint melody played, only to be overwhelmed by the shifting, intense, and sharp music. The figure with amethyst eyes suddenly exploded. Countless blurry dragons flapped their wings and flew high, some toward the stars in the sky, some toward a land of frost. Boom! Drazel only heard an earth-shattering explosion behind him. Then, magic dragons fell, and before him was a scene of ruin. Two silver dragons danced gracefully upon the wreckage. The young man, momentarily stunned, watched the dance of the silver dragons. The larger of the two suddenly flapped its wings and, in the blink of an eye, was beside Drazel. I'm flying. Drazel instinctively crouched down, gripping the raised surface in front of him. It's west. Drazel immediately deduced the direction. I'm flying west. He saw an endless expanse of plains and hills. Iron swords like a forest, the corpses of 6 great dragons resting among them. A young dragon had its head severed, lying outside the forest of swords, while a half-decayed dragon drifted beside them. Hunters drew their bows, tall towers burned. Roses hid behind the scenes, blooming silently. Great wolves howled in the north. A trout fell, another rose, and on the towering fish-beam wood, crows pecked at the eyes of a stag. The sun set to the west, and a long star passed through it. The iron gate was tightly closed, blocking the last light of the setting sun. The green dragon bled in the fire. A falcon was struck down by lightning. The dragons soared, and then, one by one, they fell. Dragon's blood spilled, and countless living beings and plants grew in its wake. A multicolored giant dragon crowned with a crown drifted across the sea. The silver dragon still flew. Drazel saw a high wall. And a pair of blue eyes. Consciousness blurred for a moment. When he regained his senses, the only thing left was the fading flames. And a voice that only he could hear. Go east. If you wish to conquer the east, you must first go west. Go west, and wait for the final chapter of the Song of Ice and Fire. Silver dragons and stars, flames and ice, smoke and salt, go, wait for the final chapter of fate. These prophetic ramblings, Drazel thought, though he had little respect for prophecies and divine messages, at least it proved he hadn't made a mistake. The flames died down, and Drazel rushed to the side of the scorched Malak, not bothering to put on his clothes. He and Ben Throro helped the self-sacrificing red-robed priest. Ben Throro didn't hesitate. He gently placed his lips near Malak's face, which was no longer distinguishable, and a surge of flame flowed into Malak's body. Malak suddenly opened his eyes, which were now blackened, with no visible pupils. Did it succeed? His charred lips split open, revealing more burnt flesh. His vocal cords had been destroyed, and he could only make muffled sounds. Seeing Drazel and Ben Throro nodding, Malak finally relaxed. Drazel placed his hand over Malak's lips, and a drop of blood fell. Almost visibly to the naked eye, flames reignited within Malak's body. Flesh began to grow anew from the charred remains. Malak still needs time to recover, Ben Throro said, closing his disciple's eyes. The resurrection spell of the Lord of Light only returned his soul to his body. Fire is both the source of life and the source of destruction. Without your blood, all I would have revived as a corpse. So, you still kept it from me, right, Throro? It was a necessary sacrifice, Ben Throro replied, looking at his disciple. Malak was eager to return to the side of the Lord of Light and guide your path. But you have given him a chance for rebirth, so I ask you to keep him here. Let this child take my place, the old man, and provide you with magical counsel. Drazel nodded. Don't worry, I won't treat my own people poorly. But I still have one question. Please ask, what did you see in the flames? Drazel asked. As a servant of the Lord of Light, interpreting prophecies in the flames was a vital skill. Though he was not at the center of the ritual, Drazel was certain that Ben Throro had seen something. I saw you sailing on a ship of great distance, drawing a sword from the fire and shadow. I saw you standing beside the Crimson Mountains, silver piled around you like an ocean. I saw you donning a bronze crown, standing beside the throne forged from iron swords. Ben Throro spoke. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 6. The Silver Blood Estate. The Orange Coast. This vast land remained under the dominion of Volantis. Despite the defeat in the Century of Blood Wars, Volantis retained significant strength, holding firm to its vast territories. The Silver Blood Estate was located here, the largest estate of the Valyrians family. Its fertile lands generously supported the 6,000 fierce warriors of the Silver Blood Army, thanks to the reforms and vision of Claelorius Vaelarys. Of course, it wasn't just this estate's yield that sustained them, but it contributed the lion's share. The warriors' families also resided here, with homes built for them by the Valyrians family, along with regular wages and benefits. This was one of the reasons the Silver Blood Army maintained such formidable combat prowess. At the estate's central courtyard, several boys were training vigorously under the sharp commands of a eunuch warrior with a piercing voice. In addition to the Silver Blood Army, the Valyrians family also boasted a significant number of unsullied warriors, eunuch soldiers forged in the slave cities of Nugis. These warriors were renowned for their absolute discipline and loyalty, touted as the finest heavy infantry in the known world. Under Claelorius's reforms, even the unsullied had been freed from the shackles of slavery and stripped of the degrading names given by their former masters. The most exceptional among them were even elevated to roles as spear instructors for the Silver Blood Army and the retainers of Drazel. The young eunuch warrior at the courtyard's center was one such individual. Known as Silver Scorpion, he hailed from Astapor, a city famed throughout the known world for producing and training unsullied. Slave masters would select robust boys and subject them to brutal training, completely castrating them and administering toxic courage drinks. Over years of relentless conditioning, these boys were stripped of their individuality, becoming human, steel. The result was an army of soldiers who, if equipped with heavy armor and spears by a wealthy buyer, could go toe-to-toe with heavy cavalry until the last man fell, regardless of the outcome. Dressed in a silver breastplate and wearing a silver-spiked helm, Silver Scorpion stood with a 6-foot-long iron spear, silently watching the boys in the courtyard practice their spear techniques. They were drenched in sweat as they swung wooden spears with determination. The lead boy was about the same age as Drazel, and bore an uncanny resemblance to him. However, unlike Drazel, this boy sported neat silver short hair and violet eyes tinged with blue. Compared to his twin brother Drazel, Valar Vaelerys was slightly taller and more robust. Despite his youth, his bare torso already displayed considerable muscle definition. With a swift thrust, the iron spear pierced through the straw training dummy like lightning. Retracting the spear, Valar accepted a silk cloth handed to him by a black-haired boy who had just sheathed his own spear. Valar wiped the sweat from his body with ease. "Hoffa, any news from home?" The black-haired boy, Hoffa, had unique golden eyes. He and his younger brother, Adams, hailed from distant Westeros. They were captured by Lysan pirate ships during raids but were later rescued by Drazel's warships. In fact, during that period, Drazel had rescued thousands of young men and women from Lysan pirate ships. Some were sent back to their homelands, while others stayed with the Valyrians family. Hoffa, Adams, Sebastian Pyribane, and Amos Fezer were among those who had remained with the family. "The Lord has returned," Hoffa said, carefully wiping the grime and sweat from his own skin. "And Amos, Sebastian, and Argo have already arrived at the estate. They're organizing the Silver Blood armies, regrouping with the commanders." Regrouping. Valar thought back to his brother's parting words before he was sent to the Silver Blood estate. "So, my brother has finally made up his mind to venture into Valyria." The boy couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Hoffa nodded. "Adams has already joined Lord Aslan Rondell, leading 1,200 Silver Blood soldiers to the ports and shipyards. The next group will include Sebastian and Lord Gonzo Pyribane, who will lead 3,000 Silver Blood soldiers and 1,500 Unsullied to reinforce Lord Aslan's forces." "What about us? We're in the third wave." "What?" Valar seemed dissatisfied. "I thought we'd be in the first wave." Hoffa shook his head. "Our role is to lead the final group of elites and to mislead the schemers in Volantis." Valar frowned in confusion, not fully grasping Hoffa's meaning. "Young master, as the Lord's twin brother, your presence here ensures that neither the Tiger Party nor the Elephant Party will realize what the Lord truly intends to do." "Got it." Valar didn't dwell on whether he understood the nuances of his brother's plans. He only knew that if he stayed put and refrained from causing trouble, he wouldn't interfere. "Hoffa, spar with me in lance training." Hoffa glanced at Silver Scorpion, who had remained silent throughout. The eunuch warrior nodded, signaling a nearby stable hand to prepare the horses. The courtyard was spacious enough to accommodate a full cavalry charge. Young attendants helped Valar and Hoffa protective gear and handed them lances. "I must admit, the Andals, heavy knights are truly formidable," Silver Scorpion remarked, watching as Hoffa and Valar, fully armored and armed with lances, began trotting toward each other. Against a charge of 1,000 Andal knights, it would take several times as many heavily armored Unsullied to hold the line. The warhorses picked up speed. Thud, the lances shattered. Valar, with a swift movement, spurred his horse forward and picked up a new lance. Hoffa wobbled slightly but managed to stay in the saddle, taking another lance from an attendant. The second charge. This time, Hoffa's lance struck Valar squarely in the chest. The lance splintered, but Valar barely flinched, his body absorbing the impact as though it were nothing. The third charge. Now it was Hoffa's turn to take a direct hit to the chest and abdomen. The black-haired boy nearly tumbled from the saddle but held on, managing to stay mounted. Well done. Valar's strength was impressive. The 12-foot lance felt like a toy in his hands. The fourth charge. Both riders struck each other squarely in the chest simultaneously. Their lances snapped. This time, only one boy remained in the saddle. Valar circled the courtyard atop his warhorse, smirking as he watched Hoffa sprawled ungracefully on the ground. Dismounting with a grin, Valar extended a hand and effortlessly pulled Hoffa to his feet. I hear the nobles in your homeland are quite fond of this game. Hoffa spat out the dirt he had accidentally swallowed. Yeah, Hoffa seemed to recall something unpleasant. In my village back home, the knights would force the villagers to pay so they could enter the lord's tournaments. The knight from our village loved to gamble, but he'd always lose his horse and armor. Then he'd come back and demand money from everyone. Oh, and when the Licini raided, he forced the villagers to fight. My father died because of them. Adams mentioned it before, Valar said, his teeth clenched as he patted his friend's shoulder. But every time I hear about it, I can't help thinking that guy is the worst. That's why we're all grateful to the Lord and the Old Master, Hoffa said. They've given us a life where we don't have to worry about going hungry, being kidnapped by Licini or Ironborn, or struggling to buy salt and medicine. Valar suddenly had an idea. Hoffa, if you returned to your village now, would you still fear that knight? Hoffa laughed. Not a chance. I could take on 10 of those fools now. On horseback, I'd even challenge one of the Stag Knights. The Stag Knights? They're knights who serve the lord of the lord of the lord of that guy's lord. I heard their family lives in a great castle with a massive round tower taller than a mountain. Hoffa gestured enthusiastically, trying to convey the image from his memories. Their knights carry banners with a stag on them. Valar searched his memory briefly, then gave up. Hoffa, I'm sure one day you'll be able to take on 10 of those Stag Knights, maybe even fight that lord you're talking about. Hoffa scratched his head sheepishly. At that moment, a man dressed in silver blood attire ran into the courtyard. He glanced around quickly before rushing to Valar, giving him a precise military salute. Sir, I have a letter for you. Valar looked at the man, puzzled. A letter for me, from the Blackwall Vaelerys estate. Silver Scorpion, observing nearby, suddenly shouted. Who are you? Stay away from the young master. 1 comments 0 vote. Chapter 7. The Sorrowful Men. Before the words could finish echoing, a spear was already airborne. The man did not hesitate. With a flick of his wrist, a dagger slid into his palm. But the boys reacted even faster. Without a word, Hoffa slammed into the man's waist, throwing him off balance. Yet the assassin, using some unknown skill, managed to regain his stance almost immediately. Hoffa's charge barely made him sway, and his dagger remained steady. Silver Scorpion's thrown spear arrived at that moment. The assassin glared venomously at Valar, who had taken advantage of Hoffa's tackle to roll away and grab a broken lance. The spear pierced through the assassin's body. Despite this, the man turned his gaze to Valar and, in High Valyrian, uttered in a low voice. I am so sorry. Reversing the dagger, he plunged it into his own throat. He was dead before he hit the ground. Silver Scorpion pulled his spear out of the corpse. It was a sorrowful assassin, Master Valar. You may need to return to Volantis sooner than planned. Who sent him? Valar, his initial fear now fading, looked at the lifeless body in confusion. Hoffa stood defensively in front of Valar, keeping a wary eye on the corpse. Silver Scorpion methodically stabbed the assassin's limbs, chest, and head with his spear. Then he turned to address the silver blood soldiers and the towering, heavily armored warriors known as the Weepers, who had arrived. Silver Scorpion. The clanging of metal filled the air as Gonzo Pyribane stormed into the courtyard, followed closely by Sebastian. Gonzo Pyribane was a towering, muscular man with braided brown hair and a knotted beard. His polished silver breastplate bore the Pyribane family crest, black flames on a deep blue field. He is a vassal of the Valyrians family, but, unfortunately, Gonzo's lineage was nearing its end. His tragic love story was well known. His wife had died in childbirth, leaving him grief-stricken. In his despair, Gonzo impulsively drank a cup of oath wine, infused with Drazel's blood, swearing never to remarry. And so, the Pyribane line faced extinction. A similar fate had befallen another vassal family, the Valtaken. Their sole heir, Rafa Valtaken, had choked to death while drinking. The Valyrians family, however, had an abundance of children under their protection at the time. Sebastian had been adopted by Gonzo, inheriting the Pyribane name. Meanwhile, Lyn had taken on the Valtaken name in the family's vassal seat. Gonzo, Silver Scorpion said sternly. This isn't the time for arguments. An uninvited guest infiltrated the estate and attempted to kill young Master Valar. We must seal off the manor immediately. Gonzo calmed himself, his expression darkening. Understood. Sebastian, come with me. Silver Scorpion, protect the young master. He drew his longsword and led Sebastian and a group of silver blood cavalry out of the courtyard. Their horses were still outside. The remaining unsullied and silver blood soldiers swiftly moved to secure the entrances and exits of the manor. Young Master Valar, Hoffa, Silver Scorpion said gravely. You must leave with Gonzo and Sebastian immediately. This sorrowful assassin is one thing, but if they've hired a faceless man, the consequences could be dire. Valar and Hoffa quickly grasped the gravity of the situation and dashed to their rooms to pack their belongings. The search of the estate lasted an entire day. Sebas, any news? Valar hurriedly approached Sebastian as the latter entered the room, panting heavily. Despite some lingering fear, Valar's initial terror had given way to anger and a hint of excitement. He was eager to uncover who had dared to target him. Sebastian grabbed the glass decanter on the table, pouring himself a cup of amber-colored fruit wine, which he downed in one gulp. My father and I searched the entire estate. All we found were a few servants who helped the assassin gain entry. They didn't know he was an assassin. He tricked them by claiming to be a new recruit for the Silver Blood forces. What happened to those servants? Valar pressed. They're fine, Sebastian replied, pouring another glass of wine and catching his breath. Hoffa made them drink, oathwine. They couldn't lie under its influence. Once we confirmed they had no involvement, we released them. Valar nodded, deeply influenced by his brother Drazel's teachings. The messenger to inform the Lord is likely close to home by now. We'll depart tomorrow morning. Understood, Valar replied firmly. Crash. The sound of expensive glass shattering reverberated across the hall. Who did this? Drazel's deep violet eyes were bloodshot. He took a long, controlled breath and glanced at the household retainers lined up on either side of the long table. Apologies. I may have overreacted. The chief retainer, Vanson Cown, stroked his beard thoughtfully, lost in deliberation. The young silver-haired Aslan Rondell, however, was seething with rage. My lord, this must have been the work of the Tiger faction. Aslan, speak with evidence, Maester Vasari cautioned. The lord is not a senator. An attack on him or young Master Valar would harm the Tiger faction far more than benefit them, leaving them vulnerable to accusations. A cold laugh interrupted Maester Vasari. The pale middle-aged man dressed in black, Zazar the Shadowbender, cast a sidelong glance at the Maester. Scholar, don't try to rationalize Thoai fools who lives inside the Black Wall. Zazar, the hereditary spymaster of House Vaelerys, was not only skilled in Lysini poisons but also in the intelligence network techniques of Bravos. He was the mentor of Tigaro Targeryan, who had been dragged back by Lyn Valtaken. There are plenty of forces both inside and outside the Black Wall capable of contacting the sorrowful assassins, Zazar began. But only the Bontaro family has direct conflict with you. Though Mogul Bontaro is an incompetent fool, his family's wealth is more than sufficient to embolden him to act recklessly. Then why didn't he target me directly? Drazel asked, his voice sharp. Killing Valar serves him no purpose. My brother has nothing to do with any of this. He paused, clenching his jaw. Or does he think killing my brother would provoke me? If so, he succeeded. Such were Drazel's thoughts. Because it's too expensive, Zazar said, limping toward Drazel with the aid of his snake-shaped cane. A severe poisoning incident had left his left leg paralyzed. Even the rulers of those free cities, or the triarchs of Volantis, cannot afford the price of killing you. Drazel was momentarily silenced. Indeed, he was surrounded by fearless warriors, including unsullied soldiers. And more crucially, he possessed blood magic. The retainers and servants had all consumed oathwine and contract wine. Even the cats, dogs, and ravens on the estate had been fed food laced with Drazel's blood. In essence, this manor was a death trap for outsiders. Even the faceless men would find it exceptionally difficult to infiltrate the grounds. Of course, a dragon would make it even better. Very well, Drazel glanced at the gathered individuals. Let's discuss how we're going to make the Bontaro family pay. My brother doesn't get to be scared for nothing. Perhaps I could use poison. Tigaro raised his hand. Just 3 drops of grey mushroom extract and a hint of scorpion tail venom, and I could wipe out everyone in the Bontaro estate without anyone realizing it. The symptoms would just look like a severe outbreak of typhoid. It's not just about lives, countered Lyn Valtaken. Tigaro, you're far too extreme sometimes. Both Lyn and Tigaro have valid points, Vanson Cown interjected diplomatically. My lord, you. This price won't just be paid by the Bontaro family, Drazel cut in, narrowing his eyes at the map spread across the long table. The Bontaros had dared to act. Whether or not they were truly responsible, they were the prime suspects. That made them guilty, and if they were guilty, then the Tiger faction backing them must also bear the cost. Inflicting a non-lethal but significant blow on the Tiger faction would undoubtedly be welcomed by their rivals, the Elephant faction. This presented a golden opportunity to shift the focus of the Blackwall nobility away from his critical plans. The ships were nearly ready. All that remained was for Malik to recover, and they could set sail for the ruins of Valyria immediately. Drazel could already feel something stirring inside him, urging him toward the Valyrian ruins. It was as though something there was calling to him. Lord Kaun, prepare the elephant carriage. Lord Zazar, you and Tigara will remain behind. Aslan, you and Lyn will accompany me to the Senate. We're going to reclaim Valar's dignity. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 8. The Senate. What? The Vaelerys family's elephant carriage is heading to the Senate. Ramal Cyrenica froze for a moment as he stepped out of a brothel, but he quickly realized what was happening. He whipped the slave carrying his litter with a resounding crack. You fool, what are you waiting for? Get to the Senate, now. He turned to a nearby slave who had just escorted him out and lashed him as well. Go find Lady Clifna and Lord Vagadu. Tell them the Tiger faction's in trouble and get our people to support us, move it. The slave stumbled and ran toward the Visamar family estate. Hurry up, another whip struck the slaves carrying the litter. Though seething with anger, they dared not complain and picked up their pace. Gods be damned, Ramal muttered, cursing the Vaelerys family's peculiar customs. In Volantis, slavery was entrenched in every aspect of life. Every free citizen of Volantis owned at least 5 slaves, and slaves formed the backbone of its economy. Volantin customs extended to transportation. Only slaves or foreigners would allow their feet to touch the filthy ground. Nobles traveled in palanquins, their status determined by the number of slaves carrying them, while commoners used carts pulled by dwarf elephants. Dwarf elephants were native to the region and widely used for transportation. Wealthier commoners owned them, while poorer citizens could rent them. The Vaelerys family, however, was different. Despite being one of the most prominent families within the Black Walls, they had, since Claelorius's reforms, officially abolished slavery. Claelorius himself had despised palanquins, preferring a faster means of travel. Thus, the Vaelerys family adopted elephant-drawn carriages for transportation. To avoid appearing too eccentric, Claelorius made a compromise. He invested heavily in acquiring massive forest elephants from the mysterious Sothorios colonies. These giant beasts, far larger than the native dwarf elephants, were imposing and fearsome. After much effort, and a great deal of Drazel's blood loss, the Vaelerys family managed to tame 2 male and 6 female forest elephants, housing them in their estate's private zoo. Thus, an unusual scene unfolded within the Black Walls that day. Nobles from both the Tiger and Elephant factions, upon hearing the news, abandoned their lavish gold-laden palanquins and rushed toward the Senate. Elephant-drawn carriages flooded the streets, more than ever seen before. So, the old sorcerer's son strikes again, Lady Clifna remarked as she was helped into an elephant carriage by her family. Opposite her sat Vagadu Cyrenica, the elderly magistrate. Vagadu was a gaunt man with silver-gold hair streaked with gray. His piercing blue eyes were as sharp as ever. Whatever he plans to do, the Tiger faction's fools have given him the perfect excuse to profit from the conflict between the factions. And we'll have to support him. Lady Clifna glanced at the hurried senators passing by. Even in the age of blood, assassinating key figures of opposing factions is considered beneath us. Do you have proof that Mogul Bontaro hired a sorrowful man to assassinate the boy? Vagadu's gaze was enigmatic as he studied Lady Clifna's violet eyes. The House of Sorrow, the sorrowful men's outpost in Volantis, has some of our investments. Clifna lowered her voice. While we can't control their actions, our spies saw members of the Bontaro family entering the establishment. Vagadu nodded in understanding. It seems the Cyrenica family needs to step up its intelligence efforts. The senator of the Elephant Party should stand together, Lord Vagadu, Lady Clifna responded with a smile. Now, let's discuss the spoils. Stubborn old hag, Vagadu thought, biting the inside of his cheek to suppress his irritation. Regardless, the Vaelerys family will claim a significant share. Do you take issue with that, Lady Clifna? Not at all, Clifna replied. Though, Given Drazel Vaeleris's recent actions, he's likely to demand gold as compensation. The gold required for compensation will be covered by us, Vagadu declared. The slaves will be counted as part of the payment, but the land and estates must remain. Lady Cliffna frowned deeply. What exactly is he planning? The Senate Hall, modeled after the freehold Senate of Old Valyria, began to fill with people. Soon, the seats were occupied by members of both factions. Naturally, the Elephant Party dominated, taking up nearly 2/3 of the room, while the Tiger faction's presence was sparse. Baricio Megaya, the Tiger faction's consul, sat calmly in his seat, while the Bontaro family's chairs remained conspicuously empty. The large doors slowly creaked open, and sharp footsteps echoed through the hall. Behold, the bearer of ancient bloodlines, enforcer of the seas, commander of the silver-blooded legion, hereditary noble of Volantis, and substitute senator, Lord Drazel Vaelarys. Aslan Rondel's voice boomed across the mosaic-tiled circular hall of the Senate as he respectfully announced Drazel's arrival. Lord Drazel Vaelarys, Consul Lady Cliffna began, her voice carrying authority, for what reason have you summoned this session of the Senate? I am here to accuse someone of hiring a sorrowful man to assassinate a noble of the Black Walls, Drazel declared. Under the Volantis Black Walls Codex, I have the right to demand a thorough investigation by the Senate to expose the culprit. Lord Vaelarys, a Tiger faction senator raised his hand. You must provide evidence to the Senate to prove that such an assassination attempt occurred. Drazel nodded toward the entrance. Lyn Valtaken silently entered the hall, dragging a decapitated head attached to a mangled body. Without a word, he tossed it onto the mosaic floor. The blood-streaked face bore the unmistakable features of a Cohoric mercenary. The room erupted into murmurs. What does a corpse prove? Shouted Ramal Cyrenica, a senator from the Elephant faction. Drazel raised his head, his gaze sharp as he addressed the room. My lords, as many of you know, my father possessed abilities that transcended mortal understanding. Drazel's eyes swept across the gathered senators. The nobles of Volantis were no strangers to magic. During the reign of Old Valyria, Volantis was one of the Dragonlord's favorite colonies and one of the world's busiest ports. Sorcerers from Ashai often displayed their powers in the city, and the Red Priests of the Great Temple frequently showcased their fire magic. Some families even kept magicians on retainer. My father left me a potion that can compel the dead to speak. Drazel held up a small vial containing a reddish liquid, which he took from Lyn's hand. In truth, it's just my blood mixed with other ingredients, Drazel thought to himself. He poured the potion onto the corpse. A strange scene unfolded. The body began to convulse violently, as if something were struggling to grow from its severed neck. A hoarse but unmistakably clear voice rasped from the dead man's throat. Bontaro, kill, boy, sorry. The hall fell into silence. As the potion's effects faded, the corpse stopped twitching, and the nascent growths on its severed neck ceased to form. My lords, Drazel said, scanning the room, do you require any further evidence? He was unconcerned about the potential repercussions of the Bontaro family's demise. Alexiu's death had been his own doing, while young Carvado showed no signs of poisoning. All the healers, including the Red Priests, concluded that he had died from cardiac arrest brought on by excessive drinking. Only Mogul refused to accept the truth. And Mogul hadn't even bothered to attend the Senate session. I am deeply sorry, said Baricio Megaria, the Tiger faction consul, bowing his head. Lord Vaelarys, we were unaware of such events. He turned to a Tiger faction senator seated nearby. Where is Mogul Bontaro? Consul, the senator replied, Lord Mogul met with misfortune on his way here. A rogue dwarf elephant collided with the Bontaro family's gilded palanquin. Lord Mogul was trampled to death. Lord Vaelarys, I regret to inform you that we cannot punish the culprits in accordance with the law, Vagadu said apologetically. In that case, I demand compensation, Consul, Drazel replied firmly. Lord Vaelarys, Vagadu reminded him with a polite tone, under the law, the Bontaro family's assets can be used to compensate you. Baricio, I trust you won't shield your fellow faction members from justice. Of course not, Baricio responded, casting a pointed glance at Vagadu before turning to Drazel with a conciliatory smile. Lord Vaelarys, what do you propose? I am not greedy, Drazel declared, his voice echoing across the chamber as he fixed his gaze on the three consuls. But the Bontaro family's attempt to assassinate my brother has crossed the Vaelarys family's line. Furthermore, our family is preparing to launch another fleet to eliminate the pirates of Lee and Tyrosh, ensuring safe trade routes for Volantis. At such a critical juncture, this treachery from the Bontaro family is intolerable. Lady Clifna's mind raced as she listened. He's planning to clear out pirates. But what does that have to do with liquidating assets? Could he be building a fleet? Thus, I request that the Senate confiscate the Bontaro family's lands and assets to compensate the Valyrians family with gold and ships, Drazel continued. He formally announced the Valyrians family's ambitions to the Senate. I will follow in my father's footsteps. Once the trade routes are secured, I plan to initiate another great voyage to solidify our connections with Et and Ashai, while also expanding southward. So that's it, the consuls thought in unison. No wonder Drazel was eager to liquidate assets. He was reviving the grand maritime endeavors of his late father. Supporting this initiative was imperative. After all, such ventures could only benefit Volantis. As for the Bontaro family, their fate had long been sealed. There was no need to spare them any consideration. Lord Vaelerys, we are eager to participate in your grand voyage, a senator chimed in. Lord Drazel, our family can provide ships. Please consider us, another noble offered. Silence, you tiger faction fool. Lord Drazel, our elephant faction stands ready to provide both ships and funds, another voice cut in. The mention of a new great voyage caused a stir among the nobles. High risk, high reward, such ventures were irresistible, especially when someone else was willing to shoulder the initial burdens. The Senate erupted into chaos. Order. Vagadu Cyrenika's booming voice finally restored silence. As you wish, Lord Vaelerys, Vagadu declared. The Bontaro family's assets will be liquidated and converted into gold, warships, and merchant vessels to compensate you. As for your great voyage, do you require the Senate's assistance? Not for now, Drazel replied with a smile. But once we return from this expedition, we may need the Senate's resolutions. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 9. Slaves and Maesters. The Summer Sea. This vast body of water links the continents of Westeros, Essos, and Sothorios. It is a crucial maritime region, and a haven for pirates. Since Tyrosh, Lee, and Myr formed the Triarch Alliance, also known as the Daughters of the Valyrian Freehold, sporadic piracy across the Narrow Sea and Summer Sea had significantly diminished. But in its place emerged legitimate piracy. Is it ironic? Not at all. Maritime trade is indeed lucrative, but nothing compares to the profits of a business requiring no investment. The ships of Lee, Myr, and Tyrosh excelled in seamlessly shifting between merchant and pirate vessels. Some even partnered with the Ironborn who commanded longships across the Sunset Sea. As a result, the seas found themselves in a peculiar state of simultaneous stability and chaos. On the open waters, a massive oared warship was slowly sinking. Nearby, another oared warship, its sails bearing the image of a naked woman holding a coin, was desperately trying to flee the scene. But escape seemed impossible. A larger sail and oar warship, at least twice the size of the fleeing vessel, was closing in relentlessly, hurling stones from its catapults. From another direction, a towering warship with a raised prow and stern surged forward. The wind filled its massive sails, propelling the ship swiftly across the waves. In mere moments, it had caught up to the fleeing warship. Both large vessels bore purple sails emblazoned with the sigil of a fire-breathing silver dragon entwined with laurel leaves. In the distance, 3 or 4 other ships flying the same banner were approaching. Damn the goddess, the pirate captain muttered as he ducked a spear and a hail of stones hurled from the larger vessel. Grabbing his panicked first mate, who was darting across the deck, he snarled, "Didn't you say this sea was safe? Where the hell did the Silver Dragon fleet come from?" "I don't know," the first mate shouted, shoving the captain aside. Before he could finish his sentence, a spear pierced his chest with unerring precision. An onslaught of arrows, spears, and stones followed. "Raise the white flag. Raise it now," the captain shouted, watching helplessly as the massive ship surged toward the bow of his vessel. No. Thud. The larger warship rammed the pirate ship's bow head-on. Its reinforced prow smashed through the pirate vessel's deck, splintering the wood and tipping the entire ship sideways. The pirate captain, unable to steady himself, was thrown overboard into the sea. What followed was straightforward. Another sail and oar warship swiftly closed in, tossing grappling hooks to secure the pirate vessel. The pirates were overpowered, their ship captured. As per standard procedure, the Valyrians fleet would strip the pirate ship of its treasures, free the slaves kidnapped by Licini raiders, and scuttle the vessel. This had been the Valyrians family's standard practice for years. But this time, things were different. The process slowed when the crew discovered a young man on board the pirate ship. "Well, that explains," the sailor said, breaking the silence. Evans Dane sincerely introduced his background. He came from the distant Westeros, the youngest son of the Dane family of Starfall in Dorne. Because he had no inheritance rights, his family sent him to study at the Citadel in Aldtown. However, during a journey, he was captured by pirates along with several companions. This was at the shipyard and docks near the deep-water port of Volantis. Volantis had a vast natural deep-water harbor, which was one of the reasons why Volantis maintained its important trade position. The shipyard and docks were the property of the Valyrians family. Upon learning that their fleet had rescued a maester from Westeros, Drazel quickly made his way to the shipyard after finishing his business at the Senate. Maester Vasari, who had stayed behind, also arrived. After all, he was the only one who could confirm that this scholar was a true maester. And maester assistant, Maester Vasari concluded as soon as he saw Evans. Evans blushed immediately. Embarrassed, he scratched his head. He had not yet taken the oath to become a full scholar, and his necklace only had 3 symbols: black iron for the crows, gold for economics, and red copper for history. It couldn't compare at all to the colorful necklaces Maester Vasari wore. Maester were a unique profession in Westeros. They trained at the Citadel in Aldtown, and a fully matured scholar had to go through a long apprenticeship and assistant scholar period. Only after meeting all qualifications would they take an oath to become a true maester. In Westeros, maesters were not just scholars but also doctors, engineers, economists, historians, and even military experts. The Citadel, where they trained, held the largest collection of books in Westeros, almost monopolizing all knowledge. After taking the oath, maester would give up their surnames, regardless of their noble lineage, and lose any inheritance rights. The Citadel would then send the maesters to serve at various lords' castles, assisting those lords with their governance or working as doctors. One lord once remarked about scholars, "Sometimes I truly feel that my maester is the real master of the castle." They served the castle they were sent to for life, until their death. The highest position among the scholars is the Grand Maester of King's Landing. The maester who attains this position will serve the royal family directly and will hold a seat at the royal council in the political system of Westeros, representing both themselves and the Citadel. "Who is your mentor, assistant?" "It's Maester Grey," Evans said cautiously. "Oh." Maester Vasari nodded and turned to Drazel. "He can be trusted. This lad is a student of my student's student." Drazel looked Evans Dane up and down. The 17-year-old young scholar wore a dirty grey robe, had pale skin, and sported short, light golden hair with violet eyes. "Matches what the books said," Drazel thought to himself. His entire impression of Westeros came from the books Maester Vasari brought and from his mother's ramblings during her relatively healthy days. But Maester Vasari had left Westeros decades ago. When he left, King Jaehaerys I still ruled. Now, the long-lived king had already passed, and a new reigned. In these few days, Drazel had been running around with many tasks. He was indeed tired, but some things still needed to be asked. Like the current situation and customs of Westeros. The prophecy in the fire had told Drazel that if he succeeded in finding something in the ruins of Valyria, he would soon travel to Westeros. He needed to gather intelligence ahead of time. Drazel sat down in his seat and gestured for Evans Dane to sit. The young scholar was somewhat nervous, but under the encouragement of Lyn Valtaken, who had been stifling his laughter, he sat down. "Evans, I need to ask you about the current situation and customs in the Sunset Lands." Drazel poured a cup of fruit wine and handed it to Evans. "I will speak without reservation." Evans Dane hesitated and glanced at the cup in his hand. In the end, he drank the fruit wine. It had a unique sweet and sour taste, with a rich fruity aroma. "Let's start with politics." Drazel poured himself a cup of wine but did not drink it. "For example, the current king of Westeros and the nobles." 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 10. Westeros. "There is something I think you should know," Maester Vasari added. Drazel thought for a moment. "I believe I understand what you're going to add. Evans, your homeland is still independent, right?" Evans Dane puffed out his chest with a hint of pride. "Indeed, My lord, Dorne has never knelt to any northern lord since the great Nymeria crossed the seas with the Great Fleet and the marriage alliance with Mors Martell. Even after Conqueror Aegon Targaryen's dragons destroyed our castles, we still proudly stand in the desert and rivers south of the Red Mountains. My ancestor, King Dorian Dane, once ruled the region of the Torrentine, and after being defeated by the warrior queen, he bent the knee to her. Another ancestor, Esser Davos Dane, became her king consort after the warrior queen became a widow. I heard you even downed a dragon? Drazel asked. His handsome face betrayed no expression. Yes, Evans Dane nodded. The remains of Merryx's still rest at the Uller family's gatehouse. Although I don't like to bring it up, Lyn Valtaken interrupted with a chuckle, the ancestor of the one sitting before you participated in the war that destroyed Rhoynar. They killed dragons and nearly drying up the entire Rhoynar River. My lord, that happened nearly 1,000 years ago, Evans Dane explained. While we take pride in our Rhoynar bloodline, it does not mean we inherit our ancestors' hatred. And you? My surname is Vaelerys, and we were once the Dragonlords of Valyria. The last emperor of Valyria, Aurelian Vaelerys, is my direct ancestor, Drazel clarified, answering the confusion. Of course, we are no longer the Dragonlords, as we lost all our dragons. The young man glanced at those around him and sighed. It's not hard for you to understand. My mother was Princess Saera Targeryan, so do you see why I'm asking you about the current state of Westeros? Evans froze for a moment. His mind had to catch up. The offspring of Princess Saera and King Viserys I were of the same generation. He wants to go back to Westeros. To claim a right to the throne. That's why he's asking about the current situation. But Saera's descendants were disinherited during the Great Council of 101 AC. No, wait, Evans suddenly realized what the current issue facing Westeros was, and a chill ran through his mind. Relax, Drazel reassured him. I'm just asking out of curiosity. While I am the legitimate son of Princess Saera, I am well aware that I have no claim to the throne. I only wish to understand more about my mother's homeland, especially since she always spoke of it before her death. He paused for a moment. In fact, before Princess Saera passed away, she often mentioned two names. King Jaehaerys, who she cursed, and Alysanne, who Say longed. Evans knew this was just an excuse Drazel had made up, but he still had to provide as complete an answer as possible. Let's start with the state of the Seven Kingdoms, Drazel said, raising his hand. Maester Vasari pulled out an old map from his robes and spread it across the floor. It was a complete map of Westeros. As you can see, the rulers of the 6 kingdoms of Westeros are the Targaryens, led by King Viserys I, your. My cousin, Evans interrupted, shaking off his nerves. Please, continue. We begin from the north and move south. The north is the largest of the 7 kingdoms, divided from the southern 6 by the neck. It remains cold year-round, even during the long summer, and often sees snowfall. It is also the poorest of the 7, ruled by the Warden of the North, Lord Rickon Stark of Winterfell. By the time I was captured by pirates, Lord Rickon had been bedridden for quite some time, and his son, Lord Cregan Stark, will be the future ruler of the North. I've heard there's a wall in the north of Westeros, built to fend off the mythical creatures of death and the wildlings. Drazel pointed north, toward Winterfell. Yes, it's one of the grandest structures in all the 7 kingdoms. It's said that Brandon Stark, the builder, with the help of giants and the children of the forest, built the wall, Evans said thoughtfully. However, the maesters at the Citadel believe that the so-called others are merely part of legend and are not to be taken seriously. Instead, the wall was likely constructed by the early rulers of the North to keep the wildlings at bay. Citadel still rejects the mysterious HMPH, Maester Vasari muttered with some discontent. They forget that the foundation of the Citadel was built on the study of the arcane. Evans did not dare to continue the conversation and proceeded with his report. South of the neck is the region of the Trident. The land here is fertile, the terrain flat, and the Frey family, who control the crossing of the river, have become a wealthy new family by charging tolls. However, the other noble families in the region look down upon them. The House Blackwood of Raventry Hall and the House Bracken of Stonehenge once ruled the Riverlands, and their enmity has lasted for over 1,000 years. Evans went on, introducing the great noble families one by one. The Tully family of Riverrun rules the Trident region as the Lords Paramount, guarding the Riverlands for the king. However, the authority of Lord Tully is not particularly strong. The Riverlords tend to resolve their own issues, and at the Lake of God's Eye, Harrenhal, the largest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, is ruled by House Strong. They lost their lord and heir 2 years ago, and the current lord of Harrenhal is a cripple. This is also a contested area, Drazel confirmed, reflecting on what he had learned. The Riverlands were prosperous and densely populated but lacked strong leadership and were caught in the middle of 4 wars. If conflict broke out, this region would become the main battlefield in Westeros. To the east lies the Vale, a relatively isolated area. The Blood Gate in the east controls the only passage into the Vale, while Gulltown in the west dominates the Vale's maritime trade. The ruler of the Vale is Lady Jane Arryn of Eagle's Nest. Under her rule, the Vale has prospered and remained stable, though it rarely participates in the politics of Westerosi courts. The Westerlands are ruled by the Warden of the West, Lord Jason Lannister of Castle Rock. The Westerlands are rich in gold, making them one of the wealthiest regions despite the many mountains. Lord Jason's brother, Esser Tyland Lannister, had already been serving at King Viserys I's court before I was captured. He's very close with Lord Otto Hightower of the Reach. To the south, the Reach faces similar problems to the Riverlands, Evans continued, showing more familiarity when discussing his homeland. The Reach is the oldest and richest of the Seven Kingdoms. It's said that Garth, the Green Hand, founded it and worked tirelessly to cultivate it. Of course, the scholars at the Citadel believe Garth was merely a tribal leader from the First Men era. In any case, the current ruler of the Reach is House Tyrell of Highgarden, descendants of the Gardeners' kings. But despite their rule, the old noble houses, like the Hightowers of Aldtown, the House Rowan of the Golden Grove, the Florence of Brightwater Keep, the Peaks of Starpike, the Redwyn family of the Arbor, and the Tarleys of Horn Hill, these ancient families, with their vast lands and armies, still trace their lineage back to the legendary Greenhand and show little regard for the Tyrell's rule. Especially the Hightowers of Aldtown, who, after King Viserys I wed Queen Alicent Hightower, have subtly risen to become the de facto leaders of the Reach. It seems there's no shortage of internal conflict in Westeros, Drazel mused, his eyes shifting to the other side of the map. The Stormlands are ruled by Lord Boromund Baratheon of Storm's End. The Stormlords are often in conflict with us Dornishmen, but the Dornish respect Boromund as a true man of honor, valuing vows, responsibility, and duty. However, his son, Royce Baratheon, is a rogue and a chameleon, Evans said, becoming more animated as he spoke of their old rivals. Please continue, said Lyn Valtaken, who had been listening intently, gently steering Evans back on track. Dorne is ruled by Prince Corin Martell. He is a cautious leader. Evans didn't want to comment too much on his lord's lord and turned to the corner of the map. This area here is the Iron Islands, where the Ironborn, who worship the drowned god, have thrived. The Greyjoy rules these rocky islands and is known for their piracy, adhering to ancient ways of raiding and plundering. Despite multiple decrees from the Iron Throne to cease, nothing has changed. This was inevitable, Drazel remarked as he saw the geography and size of the Iron Islands. It was clear that the Ironborn's path to raiding was almost a natural consequence. Finally, there is the king of the Iron Throne, Evans added. But not of the Dornish people. Undoubtedly, King Viserys is a good king, Evans continued. He continued the policies of King Jaehaerys I, maintaining general peace within the realm, and Dorne has enjoyed relative stability. However, recent events have caused unrest across the kingdom. Evans traced the timeline of these events, then continued. King Viserys' first queen died in childbirth, taking with her the king's only male heir. After that, the king had some conflicts with his brother, Prince Daemon Targaryen, eventually deciding to name Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, the realm's delight, as his heir. She is the princess of Dragonstone and the rider of the dragon Syrax. But the king soon remarried Queen Alicent Hightower, who bore him 3 sons, Prince Aegon, Prince Aemond, and Prince Daeron. This led many nobles to secretly oppose Rhaenyra's claim to the throne. This is to be expected, Drazel thought, remembering his own encounter with that unfortunate man who lost his head. After all, Viserys' right of succession was obtained by King Jaehaerys using the will of the people to deny the inheritance rights of his eldest granddaughter and daughter. Now, if you disrupt the traditional system of primogeniture, what do you think the nobles will think? But the king remained ambiguous, and the princess had some issues. Her 3 sons, born from her first marriage to Lord Corlys Velarion's son, Laenor Velaryon, lacked the characteristic features of Valyrians. Drazel perked up, curiosity taking over his thoughts. There was some gossip here. It is rumored that these 3 boys are actually the bastards of Princess Rhaenyra and her knight, Harwin Strong. However, all 3 of the boys hatched dragons, and after the king's severe punishment, no one speaks of this anymore. After all, their mother has the blood of a dragonlord, Drazel said, understanding. It matters little who their father is. After the deaths of Laenor and his sister, Princess Laena Velaryon, 2 years ago, Princess Rhaenyra married Prince Daemon Targaryen, who had lost his wife, Laena. The royal family dynamic grew even more complicated, Evans continued, summarizing the royal family's tangled relationships. But during this time, Prince Aemond, the second son of Queen Alicent, and Prince Lucerys Velaryon, the second son of Princess Rhaenyra, clashed. Prince Lucerys blinded Prince Aemond in one eye, and Aemond mounted Laena's dragon, Vhagar. One eye for a dragon, Drazel mused, thinking this was not too bad a trade, and in fact, the Targaryens might have welcomed such an outcome. After all, no matter how close they were with the Valyrians, they were still Valyrians, not Targaryens. This deepened the divide between the princess and the queen. In the 2 years following the incident, the princess and Prince Daemon lived on Dragonstone, while the queen stayed in King's Landing to assist the king with court matters. Things were relatively peaceful. Peaceful, wasn't. 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 11. Everything is peaceful. At least in the early months of the year 122 AC, Westeros was at peace. The North was quietly waiting for its lord to die. Oh, wait, the Lord of the North didn't survive last year. Now, the ruler of the North was a 14-year-old boy, Cregan Stark. However, the true ruler was actually Cregan's uncle, Esser Bernard Stark, the regent of the North. The Vale was quietly remaining obscure. No one even knew what had happened behind the Bloody Gate. The Riverlands were quietly chaotic. The Bracken killed the Blackwood chickens, while the Blackwoods stole the Bracken's water. In Harrenhal, the Strong rejected the leadership of the lame, Crooked-Foot, Larry's Strong, but allowed him to take the castle's gold. Everything was so peaceful. The Westerlands were quietly mining gold and sending substantial amounts to King's Landing, as the Lord's brother served as the king's master of ships. The Reach was quietly playing dead, with House Hightower sending another group to King's Landing to assist the king's hand, Sir Otto Hightower. The rebellious children of House Tarly ran away again, and Lord Donald Tarly was out with his family's Valyrian steel sword, Heartsbane, hunting down his son, Alan Tarly, and daughter, Diana Tarly. Dorne was quietly playing dead as well, with Prince Corran of Sunspear cautiously balancing the delicate relationships between the desert and mountain lords. The Euronwood family and the Will family were in heated conflict over land disputes. The proud female knight, Obara Dane of House Dane, had stolen the family's great sword, Dawn, and disappeared. It was said that this fiercely independent woman, whose views on love and loyalty were more aligned with the Andal ways, had overturned every man and woman who tried to court her before riding off from the castle. A furious Lord Samwell Dane had therefore issued a bounty on his own daughter. As for the Stormlands, there was even less to say. There was not a single piece of news worthy of attention. Dragonstone, Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, who had suffered from continuous pregnancies, had lost much of her youthful beauty and was now sitting in a specially crafted chair, enjoying the breeze fanned by a maid. She was pregnant again and was due to give birth soon. The little one is quite strong, Rhaenyra said, smiling as she stroked her bulging belly. Since becoming pregnant with this child, she hadn't ridden a dragon. It was said that Syrax, the magnificent golden beast, had been howling in Dragonmont for a long time. It should be a boy. The maid dared not respond to the princess. Rhaenyra chuckled and shook her head. Don't be afraid, a girl would be my little princess too. How are the children? The maid then replied, Prince Joffrey is with Vermax on Dragonmont, Prince Lucerys and Prince Joffrey are still in their lessons, and Prince Aegon is still sleeping. The wet nurse just finished feeding the child. You've done well, the princess signaled for the maid to stop fanning. Go rest. I wish to sleep alone for a while. The maid stopped fanning, gave a slight curtsy, and said, As you wish, your highness. As she turned to leave, she collided with a dusty Prince Daemon. Daemon Targaryen was a strong man, his silver hair tied carelessly behind his head. Time had left its mark on him as well. Daemon's unique charisma remained unchanged. His companion was the crimson behemoth Caraxes, the blood worm. Both prince and dragon had built a formidable reputation over decades of glory. Daemon smiled at the maid, gesturing for her to leave, before carefully unfastening the pack slung over his shoulder. Inside was a dragon egg, still radiating heat. Daemon opened the bronze brazier at the center of the room, its interior glowing with embers. He gently placed the egg inside. "Syrax has done well," the prince said with a smile. She laid another egg. A black wild dragon tried to steal it, but Caraxes and Syrax drove it away together. "The cannibal?" Rhaenyra asked, referring to the feral dragon notorious for preying on young dragons and stealing eggs. It had become a significant threat to Dragonstone's inhabitants. "Daemon, once the child is born, we should hunt that wild dragon together. We can't let it continue killing hatchlings." "I understand, Rhaenyra," Daemon replied. He rinsed his hands and face in the basin nearby, then crouched beside his wife. Pressing his ear gently against her belly, he seemed to listen intently for the child within. His voice softened. "Don't worry about such things." Just then, a thunderous roar echoed from outside the window. Daemon instinctively covered Rhaenyra's ears, then turned to peer through the window at the shadowy sky. A bronze-scaled dragon ascended into the heavens, its wings beating toward the west. Trailing it was a softer, melodic roar. A silver dragon followed suit, wings slicing through the air as it, too, flew westward. Vermithor. Daemon recognized the two great beasts. "And Silverwing, are they heading out to hunt?" Princess Rhaenyra shook her head. Since the passing of King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne, the inseparable dragons had not been tamed by anyone. Vermithor had once been the mount of King Jaehaerys I, the conciliator and arbiter. The bronze-scaled colossus was the second largest dragon in Westeros, surpassed only by the aging Leviathan Vhagar. Silverwing, on the other hand, had belonged to Good Queen Alysanne, a silver-scaled beauty smaller in size but known for flying across mountains and snowfields, spreading peace and prosperity. No one knew what had prompted their flight. A piercing roar, followed by a hiss like a serpent's, broke the stillness. Syrax and Caraxes, stirred by the commotion, joined in the chorus with their roars but remained grounded. Soon after, news of the event reached the king. "Your Grace, a message from Dragonstone." Grand Maester Mellows handed the letter to King Valyrius, who was engrossed in adjusting his model. Valyrius was a slightly stout man with silver hair and a soft expression. Before him lay a sprawling model of King's Landing, taking up much of the room. This was Valyrius' grand ambition. The capital, left in disarray by Aegon the Conqueror's unchecked expansion, had only begun to stabilize under the diligent reforms of King Jaehaerys I. Valyrius aimed to continue this legacy, reshaping the city's layout and guiding its rebirth. Carefully, he swapped the positions of two miniature buildings before straightening up with some effort. He looked at Mellows. "Read it." Mellows unfolded the letter. "Your Grace, news from Dragonstone. Vermithor and Silverwing have left Dragonstone, seemingly to hunt over the narrow sea. Prince Daemon pursued them briefly on Dragonback but found nothing unusual. I trust they can handle such minor matters. Anything else?" Mellows glanced toward the door. "The hand of the king requests an audience." "Otto." Valyrius waved his hand dismissively, irritation evident. "Send him away. It's already late." "As you wish, Your Grace." 0 comments 0 vote. Chapter 12. The fleet sets sail. Volantis, Silver Dragon Dockyard. After weeks of preparation and rest, Drazel finally announced the impending departure to the other nobles. The Bontero family had been utterly dismantled, with their wealth and lands divided between the tigers and the elephants. Drazel secured a significant share of gold, along with 23 large ships and nearly 100 smaller vessels. All of these ships were now integrated into the Vaelerys family fleet. Of course, not all of them would be used for this voyage. During the preparations, Drazel carefully selected the ships for this expedition, including the newly constructed Weeping Boy and Silent Lord. The latter, serving as the flagship, was crafted using shipbuilding techniques left behind by Claelorius. These techniques eliminated the need for oars and equipped the ships with towering masts and massive sails that could blot out the sun. It was said that these two warships were faster in trials than even the 300-oar galleys. In addition to these two giants, the fleet for this voyage included 9 sail-only ships, 12 300-oar galleys, and 65 smaller vessels with 200 and 150 oars. As long as they avoided storms, this navy could dominate the summer sea with ease. A silver-haired boy leapt from his horse and, without hesitation, threw open his arms and rushed toward Valyrians, who was waiting for him with his own arms open wide. "Brother." Valar tightly embraced Drazel, allowing his older brother to ruffle his hair and pat his shoulders. "You've grown stronger again. About the assassination attempt, I'm sorry." "It wasn't your fault, Drazel," Valar replied, letting go after a long embrace. "We were careless. I'm just glad you're safe." Drazel nodded toward Hoffa and Sebastian, who had accompanied Valar. "You two as well, safety first." Both young men stood at attention, fists over their hearts in salute. "Valar," came a disgruntled voice from behind Drazel. Only then did Valar notice little Ray hiding behind their elder brother. The boy had grown so quickly he seemed like a different person each day. "And you," Valar said with a grin, tousling Ray's hair enthusiastically. "The little brat has grown quite a bit." HMPH. Ray pouted but still gave his brother a big hug. "We were all worried about you, Valar." "How's Flamewing?" "Doing great. It gets to fly out and explore every day." Ray cast a resentful glance at Maester Visari, who had come to see them off. "It's got more freedom than I do." "Flamewing is very old," Drazel sighed. "It might not live to see our return, which is why I've set it free." The three boys mourned the Falcon for a while before boarding the warship amidst the crowd's cheers. Thanks to Drazel's prior announcement to the Senate regarding the fleet's departure, the dock was far less crowded. The waters near the dock had been cleared, providing ample room for the ships to depart side by side. The Red Priest, Malik, now mostly recovered, had also come along and was quietly reading on the deck. Vanson Count and Gonzo Pyribane remained in Volantis, while Maester Visari and his young apprentice, Evans Dane, returned to their residence. Most of Drazel's young retainers followed him aboard the ship. Lyn Valtaken donned a suit of purple armor and stood at his lord's side, alongside Argo, who wore no armor but carried an arak at his hip. Hoffa and Sebastian were also aboard the flagship, Silent Lord, assisting Ymor in commanding the ship. Tigero and Adams took young Ray aboard the Weeping Boy. This vessel was designed with comfort in mind, featuring spacious and well-lit cabins. Amos Fezer and Zazar Shadowbinder joined Aslan Londor on the 300-oar warship Sailfish, overseeing the operations of this main battleship. A deep, resounding horn echoed through the harbor. The massive fleet began its slow departure from the port, guided by tugboats. Waves crashed against the hulls as the ships advanced. Far to the north, in a place shrouded by thick mist, the towering Titan suddenly emerged, breaking through the fog and revealing the floating city behind it. Hundreds of islands, large and small, sprawled across the immense city, connected by long bridges of gray, gold, or crimson stone. This city was made entirely of stone, there wasn't a single trace of greenery. On one of these water-encircled islands, atop a low rocky hill, stood a peculiar structure with black spires. It loomed silently, shrouded in mystery. A 12-foot-tall, intricately carved wooden door stood firmly shut. The left door, crafted of weirwood and white as bone, was adorned with a crescent moon carved from black ebony. The right door, made of black ebony as dark as night, bore a crescent moon carved from weirwood. Together, they formed a perfect black and white full moon. A 10-foot diameter pool of water rippled faintly, reflecting countless niches in the walls and 30 statues of varying forms. Among them were the Weeping Woman, the Night Lion, the Hooded Walker, Bacalon, the Pale Maiden, the Stranger, and the Merman King. These deities stood in solemn silence, gazing at their reflections in the pool. A man staggered toward the water's edge, collapsing onto his knees beside a figure cloaked in half black and half white. The hooded figure handed him a cup of water, which the man accepted without hesitation. "May you find eternal rest." The voice beneath the hood was indifferent, yet carried an eerie magnetism, as if some unseen power compelled one to listen, while simultaneously making the speaker's presence seem inconsequential. A red candle burned slowly nearby. The black cup fell to the ground. The man died silently, without struggle. The hooded figure gently brushed a hand across the lifeless face. In the next moment, the figure lifted his head. The face was now the same as that of the dead man, though it bore no expression. Suddenly, the man clutched his face, as if racked by an overwhelming, explosive pain from within. He crouched down in agony, muttering incomprehensible words. After a long while, the man rose to his feet, his face devoid of emotion. The oracle of the many-faced god. He touched his face, which was slowly rotting. A descendant of the breaker of chains, the patron of the faceless men, is finally setting forth on their destined path. He lowered his head and walked slowly to the stranger's statue, where he sat. The faceless forget nothing, he murmured. As the many-faced god wills, someone will do it. Someone must do it. A tall, gaunt figure, also hooded, stepped out of the shadows. All men must die, the figure said. All men must serve. The rotting man raised his head, revealing a face now half decayed, though still expressionless. Someone answers the call. The newcomer, now by the pool, lifted his head. Beneath his hood, there was nothing. Someone still serves, the decaying man replied, his remaining features now disintegrating further. The price has been paid, and the gift will be given. Someone must travel east, to find the one whom the god has chosen to alter the symphony. Someone still has doubts. As the god wills. The man's face had now completely rotted away as he lowered his head again. Someone will speak without deceit.